Have you ever felt like you're trying to navigate, I don't know, a complex labyrinth? Especially when the walls seem to be shifting around you.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
That's often what business transformation feels like for an organization, right? A fundamental, sometimes really disorienting shift.
Hmm.
Today, we're taking a deep dive into this fascinating and, let's be honest, often challenging world of business transformation and change management.
Yeah, definitely challenging sometimes.
We've got a fantastic stack of sources here, mastering business transformation and change management. And our mission really is to pull out those truly potent
So that's
insights.
good. Nuggets, yeah.
We want to understand what it really takes for an organization to change successfully, exploring not just the how, but maybe more importantly, the why and the who behind it all.
Exactly. We're going to try and unpack those things that can, transform how you think about change. Moving beyond just textbook definitions to how it actually works.
Okay, so let's unpack this first bit then. Why? Why is leading change so utterly critical for any business looking to, well, survive and thrive?
Yeah.
Especially now, it feels like constant reinvention is just the norm.
It absolutely is. And what's fascinating here, I think, is how fundamental leadership becomes in all this. A successful leader, they don't just manage the process like ticking boxes.
Right.
They effectively have to sell the need for change.
Right.
They've got to directly tackle that primary resistance point, that often unspoken question, why do we need to change in the first place?
Ah, okay. So tackling the why head on.
Yeah. Without that conviction, that leadership from the top, even the most brilliant strategy is just going to, gather dust on a shelf.
So it's about far more than just like issuing directives or sending out a company-wide email, isn't it? What are those other crucial, maybe less obvious ways a leader really influences people to accept and adopt the change?
You're hitting on a key point there. It's really multifaceted. A truly effective leader, especially during change, they sort of become the chief storyteller.
Storyteller,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, marketing and promoting this new vision in a way that gets genuine cooperation, not just compliance. And this often means resolving the inevitable conflicts that pop up
Oh, for sure.
and being remarkably open-minded,
Yeah.
actively seeking out new ideas, even if they challenge the plan they already have. They also need to be incredibly transparent. Freely sharing information builds that essential trust.
Transparency, yeah. That seems key.
And here's a subtle one, but really powerful. Cultivating a sense of stability, even while you're driving significant change. It's like giving people a psychological anchor when everything else feels like it's shifting.
That makes sense. A bit of calm in the storm.
Exactly. Plus, showing immense confidence in your people, sharing credit and recognition generously, and, building and relentlessly communicating that clear, compelling vision. It's often less about the what and more about the why and where we actually going together.
Okay, so leadership is crucial. Now, how do we structure this? Are there models that help?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, Lewin's three-step change model, developed by Kurt Lewin, of course, it gives us a really clear, sort of actionable roadmap for transformation. It's foundational, quite old, but still incredibly insightful for managing change.
Right, Lewin. And those three steps, they are foundational for a reason, I suppose. Step one, unfreeze. That means identifying what actually needs to change, yeah. It's not just seeing a problem, but really digging into the habits or assumptions that need disrupting.
Precisely. It's about creating the psychological readiness for change. You're essentially shaking up the status quo, showing why the current way isn't working anymore, creating that initial, maybe uncomfortable feeling that makes people want to move.
That disequilibrium you mentioned. Okay, then you move into step two, make the change. That's the active part, where you're implementing all the new policies, processes, practices. This is where the rubber hits the road, so to speak.
Right. And it's not just about implementing, it's about supporting people through that implementation.
Yeah.
This is often the messiest bit, full of unforeseen challenges, maybe some bumps in the road.
I can imagine. And finally, step three is refreeze. Now, this step feels absolutely crucial, but you hear it's often overlooked or maybe rushed.
Very often, yeah.
It's about consolidating all those changes, embedding them into the business's policies, its culture, its daily objectives, basically making them the new normal for the long haul.
Exactly. The strategic importance here is making sure each phase is thoroughly completed. So many transformations fail because they rush the unfreeze, maybe don't build enough urgency, or even more commonly, they just skip the refreeze altogether.
And then what happens?
Well, without solidifying the new ways, gravity just pulls you back to the old comfortable habits. It's like pouring concrete, but then walking on it before it's fully cured. It just won't hold.
Okay, that makes sense. So we have the leadership. We have a model like Lewin's. What does this all mean for the hands-on strategies? The practical tools a business can use to actually make change happen and, importantly, respond to those key performance indicators, the KPIs.
Right, beyond the model, the actionable levers. Well, there's a pretty wide spectrum. When we talk about improving people, for example, it's not just basic skills training. Think about strategic staff training.
Strategic. How so?
Well, training that doesn't just teach a new process, but maybe fosters cross-functional understanding. That can lead to unexpected insights, better collaboration, higher productivity, which in turn often reduces staff turnover.
Ah, interesting link.
And motivation. It isn't just about, dangling a carrot like a bonus. It can be about team building that actually fosters psychological safety so people feel okay speaking up,
Sure.
or goal setting that gives individuals a real sense of purpose and ownership over the change itself.
That ownership piece feels important. What about operational efficiency? Because that's often where change is felt most immediately. On the bottom line, perhaps.
Absolutely. Increased investment in technology is a common one, but it's not just about buying new software. It's about really leveraging automation, maybe, to free up your talented people for more complex value-adding tasks.
Using tech smartly, not just for its own sake.
Exactly. And when we talk about lean production techniques, think Toyota's famous system. It's not just about cutting obvious waste. It's about relentlessly identifying and eliminating all forms of waste. Time, effort, materials. It fosters this continuous improvement mindset, a real cultural shift towards efficiency. And that directly hits KPIs like cost, productivity, and, ultimately, net profit.
And beyond just being efficient, businesses need to grow, to innovate. How do strategies fit in there?
Well, innovation is often a direct response to a need for growth or maybe a threat from competitors. It can shift your market share, boost sales, improve customer satisfaction if you innovate in the right way. And don't forget global reach.
Right, globalization strategies.
Yeah, things like global sourcing of inputs or maybe overseas manufacturing or global outsourcing. It isn't just about finding cheaper labor anymore, though that can be part of it. It's often about optimizing your whole supply chain for resilience, for quality, maybe gaining access to new markets or specialized skills you can't find locally. All of that can significantly affect your sales, your market share, your profitability.
Okay, lots of operational and strategic levers there. But it's not just about processes and numbers, is it? What about, well, the very heart and soul of a company, its corporate culture? That feels like the most intangible, yet maybe the most powerful piece of this whole puzzle.
You've absolutely nailed it. Corporate culture. It isn't just some fluffy statement about shared values and beliefs on a poster.
Right, it's more than that.
It's the unspoken rules, the deeply ingrained habits, the way things really get done around here.
Yeah.
It's what makes one company feel totally different from another, even in the same industry. It's what differentiates a truly innovative company from one that just, talks about innovation.
So how do you change something so ingrained? You can't just issue a memo saying be more innovative.
Exactly. You can't just decree a culture change. It requires deliberate effort. Things like establishing new rituals, rites, celebrations that actively reinforce the desired behaviors, changing the prevailing management style, maybe shifting from command and control to more coaching-oriented approaches.
That sounds like a big shift for some managers.
It can be. And making sure staff training doesn't just impart skills, but actively embeds the new values. Senior leaders absolutely have to walk the talk. They must embody the values. And the hiring process itself becomes this critical filter, consciously bringing in people who seem to naturally align with the desired culture you're trying to build. Rewarding employees who exemplify the values reinforces it too.
This whole conversation raises an important question for me. What if an organization could be designed somehow to naturally evolve and improve, almost like a living organism, rather than constantly having to react to external pressures with these big disruptive transformations?
That's a great question, and it leads us straight to Peter Senge's concept of the learning organization. It's exactly that, an organization that continually, proactively, seeks to change and improve itself as part of its normal operation.
So it's not about isolated training programs or one-off change initiatives?
No, it's much deeper. It's about embedding 5 key disciplines into the fabric of the organization. Disciplines that integrate to create this perpetual learning environment.
Okay, what are they?
There's systems thinking, which is about understanding how everything is interconnected, seeing the whole picture, not just isolated parts. Then personal mastery, where individuals are encouraged and supported in continually learning and growing. Mental models involves challenging our own deep-seated assumptions and biases about how things work.
That sounds tough.
It is. Then building shared vision, creating a genuine collective sense of purpose that everyone buys into. And finally, team learning, where the focus is on dialogue and collective thinking, so the team's intelligence is greater than the sum of its parts. It's about creating a culture where curiosity, experimentation, asking what if, and adapting are just the default settings.
Wow, that sounds like the ideal, almost. But let's bring it back to the reality for many places. No matter how brilliant the strategy, how clear the vision, or how elegant the model, people are often the toughest part of the equation when it comes to change, aren't they? Resistance feels almost guaranteed.
It really is. It's a natural human reaction, often stemming from fear of the unknown or a perceived loss of status, comfort, competence, maybe even their job.
So how do leaders navigate that?
Well, we can generally categorize strategies to overcome employer resistance into two main types, based largely on their risk and long-term effectiveness. First, you have low-risk strategies.
Low risk sounds good.
They are. These aim to build trust and genuine support, and they nearly always lead to less resistance in the long run. Think communication, not just broadcasting messages, but real dialogue, keeping people informed about the why and how, listening to concerns, empowerment, giving employees actual ownership and responsibility in the change process, not just assigning tasks. This taps into intrinsic motivation.
Makes sense. What else?
Support, making sure employees feel equipped and comfortable, providing training, resources, maybe coaching, ensuring they don't feel isolated or overwhelmed, and incentives, showing employees a clear, tangible benefit for them. This isn't just about bribes, but demonstrating how the change might genuinely improve their work life, their skills, or future opportunities.
Okay, so those low-risk strategies sound like they build long-term buy-in, build trust. What's the flip side? What are the higher-risk approaches?
Right, the high-risk strategies. These generally have a much lower chance of delivering effective, sustainable change, and they often backfire. These include things like manipulation.
Manipulation? Like how?
Well, essentially deceiving employees into accepting change, maybe by selectively presenting information, twisting facts, or creating false urgency. And then there are outright threats.
Threats. Wow.
Yeah, gaining support through coercion, implying negative consequences like job loss, demotion, or loss of privileges if people don't comply. Now, while these high-risk tactics might yield some immediate surface-level compliance,
There's a butt coming.
big but, they fundamentally erode trust. They foster resentment, fear, cynicism. You might get people to do the thing, but you completely lose their hearts and minds. There's zero ownership, zero commitment. It often leads to passive resistance, lower morale, and people leaving as soon as they can.
Yeah, it seems blindingly obvious. If you were a leader or even an employee just navigating this, which approach would you want to see used? It's pretty clear why one builds trust and the other just, well, shatters it.
Absolutely. And thinking about trust and impact leads us to another point. When a business undergoes significant transformation, who truly feels the effects and how profoundly? It's not just internal. This change creates a ripple effect throughout the entire ecosystem of the business.
A ripple effect. Explain that a bit more.
It means the impact isn't contained within the company walls. It's systemic, affecting various key stakeholder groups, sometimes positively, sometimes negatively.
And those impacts can be incredibly far-reaching, right? Affecting everyone from the very top down to the wider community, like for owners.
Their investment might skyrocket if the change is successful, or they could see the value plummet, maybe even lose their business entirely if it fails.
And managers?
They might need to completely rethink their leadership style, maybe learn new skills. They might be involved in restructuring their teams, sometimes making difficult decisions. Their own roles could change drastically or even disappear.
What about employees on the front lines?
They often bear the brunt. They might require significant retraining or redeployment to new roles, or, unfortunately, they could face redundancy if roles are eliminated.
And customers. We forget them sometimes.
We shouldn't. They might need to adapt to new ways of interacting with the business, maybe new online systems or different service methods. They could also experience changes in product quality or price, good or bad.
Suppliers, too.
Definitely. Suppliers might suddenly lose long-standing contracts if the business changes its sourcing strategy. Or they might be pressured to lower their costs to remain competitive. They could also face increased competition if the business opens up its supply chain.
And the general community.
The general community can suffer significantly if major local businesses close down due to failed transformations, leading to job losses and economic decline. Conversely, they can benefit hugely if a business expands successfully, creating new jobs and opportunities.
So managing change isn't just an internal HR exercise.
Not at all. And this brings up a really crucial point around corporate social responsibility, or CSR. Businesses, especially when making big changes, simply can't ignore their broader impact on society and the environment.
So CSR isn't just a nice to have during transformation.
It really shouldn't be. It's about more than just the immediate bottom line. It's about embedding ethical considerations right into your change strategy. Understanding that your social and environmental impact isn't separate from your long-term business sustainability. It reflects heavily on your brand reputation, your ability to attract and retain talent, and ultimately your relationship with customers and the communities you operate in. Ignoring CSR obligations during change can be very risky.
Okay, that's a critical lens. So let's pull this together. After all this effort, the leadership, the models, the strategies, navigating the human dynamics, considering the ripple effects and CSR, how does a business actually know if the transformation worked? Was it successful? How do you measure that?
That's where those key performance indicators, the KPIs, come back into the picture, but maybe with a slightly different lens this time.
How so?
Well, while KPIs often drive the initial need for change, showing declining sales or rising customer complaints or poor efficiency metrics, they are just as essential, maybe even more so, for evaluating the effectiveness of the change after it's happened. Did we move the needle on the things we intended to?
So comparing the before and after KPIs.
Yes, but it's also useful to think about leading versus lagging indicators during the process. Lagging indicators like last quarter's profit or annual staff turnover tell you what has already happened. They confirm success or failure after the fact.
Okay, looking backwards.
Right. But leading indicators give you a glimpse into what is likely to happen. Things like employee engagement scores during the change, process efficiency improvements measured week by week, customer satisfaction surveys on a new service model as it's rolled out.
Ah, like early warning signs or early signs of success.
It's exactly. Focusing on those leading indicators during a transformation gives you real-time feedback. It allows you to see if things are heading in the right direction and make course corrections long before the final lagging indicators deliver the verdict, when it might be too late to adjust.
Wow.
So reviewing KPIs isn't just a final step, it's an ongoing process throughout the change.
Wow. We have covered a lot of ground today. We've taken this incredible journey through business transformation, really digging into the crucial role of that visionary leadership, looking at foundational models like Lewin's, exploring that whole range of practical strategies from people to operations to global reach,
And the culture piece too.
the vital, often invisible importance of corporate culture, absolutely, navigating that tricky human element of employee resistance, the low risk versus high risk approaches, and understanding that broad ripple effect on all the stakeholders, plus the CSR angle.
It really reinforces that successful change isn't, a one-time event. It's not just a project with a neat start and end date that you tick off.
Right.
It's much more like a continuous cycle, a cycle of learning, adaptation, refinement, where every aspect of the organization is considered not as fixed, but is constantly capable of evolving. The most resilient organizations, the ones that really thrive long-term, seem to be those that build this capacity for change right into their DNA. They become learning organizations.
That's a powerful idea, building change into the DNA. So if we take that idea that successful organizations are constantly learning and adapting, maybe there's a final thought for everyone listening. How might an individual apply these very same principles we've discussed, unfreezing their own current habits or ways of thinking, changing towards new behaviors or skills, and then consciously refreezing those new habits into their daily routine? How could you use this model for your own personal growth and adaptation in what feels like a constantly rapidly changing world? What's your personal refreeze right now?